Before we go on to the subjunctive mood in chapter 21, I want to call your attention to some of the things in the workbook concerning participles. You may already have discovered these, but I thought maybe it'd be worth our pointing out. I have summarized the present aorist, first and second aorist, and aorist passive participles in these forms. I've noted the characteristics of each, and then the middle and passive in that section. And then this is what I really wanted to get to on this. Page 39. The translation, loosing, being loosed, having been loosed, or having loosed and having been loosed. Good summary there. And then this chart. The participle, if it's present tense participle, and you have a present and future main verb, present or future, then your helping verb is going to be is or are. If your helping verb is past, it will be was or were. The temporal word for the adverbial participle is while. All of that present participle, having to do with the present participle. Then if you have the aorist participle, your main verb is present or future. It will be has or have, plural. Or if your main verb is past, had or had. And your temporal word with the adverbial aorist participle is the word after. So that may be a little helpful summary there. Then the participle forms you probably already have seen, page 39. And these various forms, you won't find them together like this anywhere except here. In this page we have the present and the aorist. Then we have the second aorist, the perfect, which we haven't even gotten yet, and then the participle of me. That should be an epsilon there, not a ni, an epsilon throughout, as you'll see. Okay? Now, the subjunctive mood is found on page 128 of Machen, and we'll look at the vocabulary first. Amortano, I sin. Dekiasini, righteousness. On, the conditional particle, if, that's used with the subjunctive. Is used with the indicative for if. So on with the subjunctive, if. With the indicative, if. Evangelisme, deponent with middle forms. I preach the gospel, or I preach the gospel to. Now this I preach the gospel to, all of that would go into the verb section of your English diagram. You won't put I preach and then the gospel is the object and all that. This verb, evangelisme, should be translated preach the gospel or preach the gospel to, depending on if there's an object. If there is an object, then it would be preach the gospel to, and then the object would be in the object spot, like imas, number 1 in your exercises. Evangelisme, imas. Then ina takes the subjunctive, and it means in order that. This is a purpose particle. In order that. Ina. And then laos, a people. Lipos, own, an adjective meaning the remaining, or lipi, the rest. In fact, the word hoi lapoi is the word from which we get this word, a different pronunciation of it. This is the word, the remaining ones, the rest. Makarios, aon, the word blessed. Martyria, a witness or witnessing, a testimony. Mithe, and not, nor or not even. And then mithe. That's mithe with intervening clause, and then mithe, neither nor. This is simply the subjunctive way or the non-indicative way of saying uthe, uthe. Uthe, uthe, neither nor. Mithe, mithe, neither nor. Okay? Miketi, no longer. That's with verbs other than, or with moods other than the indicative. And we had uketi, I believe, no longer. I think we've had that before. This uketi with indicative, miketi with the subjunctive or other moods. Oklos, a crowd or a multitude. Oklos, a crowd or a multitude. Now, the subjunctive mood is the second mood that we've had. and we had the participle in between, but we had indicative mood and now subjunctive mood. Now we need to define this, and we had to remember way back on page 2 of your workbook, we had a place for definitions. And under mood, we had, mood describes a relation between the statement and reality. Then we had the indicative mood, and we said the indicative mood describes or gives a statement considered true by the speaker, considered to be true. The subjunctive mood, on the other hand, refers to an unfulfilled statement, or a statement is unfulfilled in the mind of the speaker. It's a future kind of thing, unfulfilled in the mind of the speaker. So you should put that in. And by the way, while we're speaking of that, we have given other definitions, and you should fill those in as well. Go back in that part of your workbook and remember the definitions that we've given you and fill that in. Then the subjunctive only occurs in the present and the aorist, and we should look at the forms now and see that the forms are going to have the same endings. In other words, all the endings are primary endings, either OEC or me-ite. The difference, one big difference is that there's a long variable vowel. The key to the subjunctive forms is that instead of having a omicron epsilon as a variable vowel, it's omega eta. Omega eta is the variable vowel, and you'll see that throughout the subjunctive. Now here are the forms. You'll see the paragraphs. This is back in the back of the book, paragraph 602, and those are the forms of e-me. He says in this chapter, learn the subjunctive forms of e-me. Well, I've given them to you. They are o, is, e, omen, ite, osi. Now, the only difference between the subjunctive of e-me and the present subjunctive of Leo is the different root. In other words, the forms of e-me are the endings of all the other active subjunctives. Here's the stem, li, and then it's o, is, e, omen, ite, osi. See? Stem li. So you look at the stem, that's the present stem, therefore the present subjunctive. Now, you won't be able to tell whether that is present or subjunctive or indicative. There's no way to tell except by context. Now, if you want to make it aorist, paragraph 274, then you see a sigma. Don't worry about the alpha. There is no alpha. In the subjunctive, you simply add a sigma to the present stem, and you have the aorist subjunctive stem. So you have the aorist stem, and then the same endings. O, is, e, omen, ite, osi. So, with a sigma, aorist. Without a sigma, present. Then the second aorist. Simply the second aorist stem, and then the same thing. O, is, e, omen, ite, osi. Second aorist active. This is not in Machen, but that's what it would be. Then the aorist passive, letho, lethis. So we have simply leth, lambda, epsilon, and then theta. Remember, the theta is always connected with the aorist passive anyway, so we have letho, o, is, e, omen, ite, osi. Isn't that simple? We have the same endings. All these endings are the same, and all you need to know for the present or the aorist participles is what do you add? You add a sigma for the active, you add the second aorist stem for the second aorist active, and then a theta will give you the aorist passive. Now, those are the actives. Now, he gives us here two middle or passives, or in paragraph 271, he gave us the present, middle, and passive subjunctive of Leo, and it's Leo-me. But you see the variable vowel there, O-E-E. Omega eta, not omicron epsilon. And then it's the primary endings again, me-ite, methystonde. Then in paragraph 275, the aorist middle, same thing except you have a sigma in there. The difference between the present subjunctive and the aorist subjunctive is a sigma only. Now if you mark those, go back over them, and the forms should not give you any trouble at all. But there are quite a few forms in this chapter, so make sure you have them down, especially if you're expecting to take a quiz. Now, the explanation of how you use this, notice he doesn't give any translation. That's what you've been used to. Give a form, give a translation. Well, the translation of the subjunctive will be a little harder to come by. So we need to find that answer in the various uses. Look at some of the things he says about this. Now, what I mentioned about the long variable vowel is in paragraph 272. Jot that down in Machen. Well, 269 and 272. Then the usages, the use of it, is started in paragraph 283. The tenses of the subjunctive. Subjunctive is absolutely, there's no distinction in time. Now I put this in the workbook, you follow along in that, and there'll be no problem there. But there's no distinction in time between the tenses. The aorist tense does not refer to past time and the present to some kind of present time, etc. It's simply the same translation. He points this out in the middle of that paragraph. The aorist subjunctive refers to action without saying anything about its continuance or repetition. Kind of action, not time of action. The present subjunctive refers to it as continuing or being repeated. Thus, ina liso. Now, liso is aorist. Ina liso means in order that I may loose, while ina leo means in order that I may be loosing. But really, it's hard to bring that translation out. I simply say, translate both of them in order that I may loose. Don't try to make it some kind of distinction, but in your interpretation, then you can bring out the continuation. But interpretation, make it the same. As you would expect in paragraph 284, the negative is me, because outside the indicative oo, outside the indicative me. The hortatory subjunctive, paragraph 285, you'll see in the hortatory subjunctive, he translates it, let us believe. Now the hortatory subjunctive is the first person plural only. It's the only time you have the hortatory subjunctive, because when you say hortatory, you're saying let us do something. That includes the speaker and someone else. So that would be first person plural. So pistevsomen, East tone Kyrion says, let us believe in the Lord. Now, the way you diagram that is right here in the workbook, page 41, let us believe in the Lord. So, and then we just write the let us in. It's a hard thing to do. There's no other way to handle it except that, as far as I know. So just put let us in there. And then in the English, the same thing. Let us believe in the Lord. That's the hortatory subjunctive. Now, sometimes the first person plural will be translated, we should believe in the Lord. If he gives you a emis, in other words, if he gives you the subject, then it will be we should. If he doesn't give you a subject, then it's let us. The statement as it stands there has no subject, except in the verb. But if he gives you emis there, then you would say let us, or you'd say we should. But you have to translate your we. Now another use of the part of the subjunctive is in paragraph 286. Expresses purpose. Ina with the subjunctive. Look at the example. We come in order that we may see him. So the main clause is we come, just that one word. Then ina, a subordinating conjunction, begins its clause, and that's the rest of this sentence. So that is going to modify the main clause. We come in order that we may see him. The second sentence is, we came in order that we might see him. Now he says may in one and might in the other. Same subjunctive verb, but you see the difference? In the first one, there's a present tense main verb. In the second one, there's an aorist main verb. So when you have a present tense main verb, we come in order that we may see him. A past tense or an aorist main verb, then we say we might see him. That's the translation. Now the diagram is shown on page 41 of the workbook. We come in order that we may see him. Now this is adverbial. It answers the question why. Anything that answers the question why is an adverb. So we diagram it under the verb. It's modifying the verb. Why do we come? We come in order that we may see him. So this will tell us why this occurs, and therefore is adverbial. The subjunctive is also used in future conditions. Now by future he means unfulfilled. We use the idea of if. We have this in English. We have several ideas in English about the subjunctive. We can say, I wish. I wish he were my brother. Well, if I say I wish, once I say wish, then I am telling you that there is an unfulfilled condition or unfulfilled statement coming up. I wish that he were my brother. If I say, if I were king, you know right away I'm not, because I'm saying if in English. And once I say if, then I have a subjunctive idea following. And we've pretty well lost most of our subjunctive words, our subjunctive forms in English, but we do retain them in the to be verb. I just said, if I were king. I wouldn't say, if I was king. I shouldn't say that. Was is indicative. Were is subjunctive in English. So I'd say, if I were. So we use, we don't have many verbs, so we use if and wish and hope, that kind of thing, to indicate unfulfilled. Well, Greek has these forms, and one way that they use it is in paragraph 288, the subjunctive in future conditions. If we go into the house, we shall see the Lord. Now, we haven't gone into the house. That's a future thing. If we ever do it, it'll be future. If we go into the house, we shall see the Lord. Now, we have something here called the protasis and apodosis. Look in paragraph 289 there, and you'll see those two words, protasis and apodosis. The protasis is the if clause. The apodosis is the conclusion. Now, the protasis is if we go into the house. Now, the kind of condition is telling me whether I expect that to happen or not, or whether it has happened or not. When I use a I'm with the subjunctive, I'm saying we haven't gone into the house yet, but if in the future we do, then we will see the Lord. And if the protasis comes true, then the apodosis will naturally follow. So I'm making that promise. That's what the third class, or the future condition, has in mind. Now, if I use the first class condition, then I'm assuming that to be true. I may say, if you are teaching the brothers, and I'm assuming you are, if you're teaching the brothers, then you are good disciples. So I'm assuming that that you are teaching the brothers. That is E with the indicative. As you'll see in paragraph, or top of page 33, 133, number 2. He says there, he uses the I'm with the subjunctive, and then he goes on to explain E, about the 5th or 6th line down. E, didaskete tous adelphous, dem pista iste didaskeli. If you are teaching the brothers, you are faithful disciples. And that E with the indicative assumes the protasis to be true, and therefore assumes that the apodosis will follow. So that's a little thing like first and third class condition. One thing you need to remember about the first class condition, that is E with the indicative, it is not necessarily true. It is assumed to be true. So we're not saying that every time you see a first class condition or a E with the indicative in the New Testament, that that's a true statement. Jesus said, if I cast out demons by Beelzebub, first class condition. Wait a minute, that's not true. That's assumed true. He's saying, assuming that I do cast out demons by Beelzebub, then by whom do your sons cast them out? He's making a statement, and he's setting them up. Assuming this is true, then what about this? So he's not saying it is true, but it is assumed true. It may be assumed true for the argument. It may be assumed true for many reasons, but it's only assumed true. So I would never use the word since. Maybe by context, but never just out of the E with the indicative. All right. So what I'm saying then is we have two kinds of conditions. An I'm with the subjunctive, that is a future condition, unfulfilled, with prospect of being fulfilled. And we have the first class condition, E with the indicative, and that is assumed true for some reason, and that is E with the indicative. And we see illustrations of that in the workbook. If we have here eon with a subjunctive, we will see the Lord. That's the example he gave in the paragraph. If we go into the house. If we go into the house, we'll see the Lord. Future condition. If we do, we may, probably will, but if we do, we'll see the Lord. Protasis, apodosis. If this happens, then this will happen. And the key then is the protasis. What kind of condition is the protasis? That will tell us what prospect we have for the apodosis to be fulfilled. Then we have the E here. If we are disciples of the Lord, we will be saved. The theology is not that good, but it's a sentence anyway. If we are disciples of the Lord, we will be saved. Then we could have the same kind, the E clause, the first class condition, with a hortatory subjunctive. If we are disciples, let us teach the brothers. So either of those will do. They're both examples that Machen gives in the text. And when I said bad theology, I'm not saying Machen's theology was bad. He's making up sentences. And Machen was a really fine theologian as well as Greek man. And so I would never want to cast any aspersions on him. He's with the Lord now, and we're reaping benefit from the labors that he put forth. The exercises are there in the subjunctive. Remember, we said that you have no particular way to translate the subjunctive. You simply do it by whether it's an eon or an ina or a hortatory, whatever it is, and you learn from the various paragraphs that we discussed. When we finish this, when you finish those sentences, then we'll be ready for the next chapter. But before we do that, let me suggest something to you. When you translate these sentences, remember I said a long time ago, and said it often, that when the first thing you do is to get the main verb. Find the main verb. Now look at that first sentence. Eon starts the clause. You know that eon, the verb that follows eon, is not going to be the main verb. That is in a subordinate clause. The main verb is limpsesthet. So divide your sentences up into clauses. Maybe put parentheses around these subordinate clauses. Put sentences around the participles. And get down to that main verb. Then get the main verb on the line. It's almost like this. If I had a magnetic chalkboard, what I would do would be to take the various clauses that I found in the sentence, line them up, diagram them, various little spots here, and say, well, there's one, here's another over here, and get these clauses all lined up, and then work like a jigsaw puzzle. Well, here is a participle. What kind of a participle is it? Well, it's, better take that off there if it's going to be a participle. Here's a participle, it's adverbial, all right? Adverbial participle, put it under the verb. Well, here's an on clause. Well, if it's an on clause, it goes under the verb. Put it under the verb too, so we have two under there. See what I'm saying? Take it like a jigsaw puzzle. Divide and conquer. You'll never really have a clause any longer than chapter 4 that you had. Remember you had subject, verb, object? That's all you have here. Subject, verb, object. Over here, subject, verb, object. Up here, subject, verb, object. Then you put these depending on what kind of a word they represent. See, this whole thing represents an adverb. Just one word. It's a clause taking the place of one word, an adverb. Now you might have a participle here